Well, Mr. Dave Barker, how old are you?
73.
When did you move to Williams?
1986.
You got a family?
I have a wife and a stepson.
Uh-huh.
A couple of cats.
Uh-huh. And what would you say your profession is?
At the moment, retired home worker.
Yep.
Doing tree stuff around the property.
I mean, we're sitting behind or in front of a bunch of days of work. And what'd you say? It's all hand split?
Yeah.
What's the key? Because I see so many old people that rest on their laurels and don't do this. Why do you still do this? Why do you still split it yourself?
I was raised kind of do-it-yourself kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't have extra money to pay others to do for me.
Yep.
So I did as much as I could for myself.
Yep.
Most of the buildings around here I built and things like that.
Where were you born?
Butte, Montana.
Uh-huh.
Home of Evel Knievel.
Uh-huh.
And lately, Rob O'Neill.
What?
Nobody knows who Rob O'Neill is, but
No. Who's Rob O'Neill?
he's the guy that killed Osama bin Laden.
Aha. Aha.
Butte's famous for characters.
Aha. Huh.
Always has been.
Huh. What was growing up in Montana like? I mean, I know you a little bit, so I'm trying to give other folks a glimpse into your life. So I know that you left pretty early.
Well, I was born in Butte.
Yep.
My dad was a steel contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Built big things like dams and highway bridges and had crews all over the state. But my mom divorced him when I was 8. We moved back to Butte and lived poor until out of high school.
Hmm.
And I had a miner as a stepdad, Lee Perkins, who was originally from West Virginia, hellacious miner. Only weighed 135 pounds, but he was one of the best miners in Butte, and people talked about him in bars 60 miles away because I was in a bar in Wise River, Montana, and they were talking about Perky.
Huh.
And I went over and said, "You talking about Lee Perkins?" They said, "Yep." I said, "That's my stepdad." And they said, "Well, sit down, boy, I will buy you a beer."
Huh.
So anyway, Lee was a hell of a worker, but a terrible alcoholic.
Uh-huh. Good family life or not so much?
Well, most people would call my childhood and family dysfunctional. A lot of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
My mom and dad got into fights that were brutal.
Mm-hmm.
You see the blood flow from his forehead when she crashed him with a cast iron pan.
Yep.
She filled up his cowboy boots with hot boiling water one time when his legs were hanging over the bed, passed out. First time I heard a grown man scream.
Yep.
So we were pretty much on our own and learned to work young. I had a job at 16. I was making almost grown-ups' wages, working 30-some hours a week in high school.
What were you doing?
Box boy at Safeway and cleaning the butcher shop.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
We did a lot of hunting and fishing.
Yep.
You know, camping, extended periods, you know, go out for a month and fish. And my mom was great at cooking on a fire.
Mm.
She had a big old cast iron skillet about that big and cooked 12 pancakes at a time.
Mm.
We'd eat I remember eating 6 fish for breakfast.
Wow. Yep.
We'd catch 50, 60 fish a day.
Yep.
Me and my 2 brothers.
Huh. You only got 2 brothers or other siblings?
Well, I have my mom's first husband and her. Well, my mom ran away at 15.
Wow.
Because she had an abusive stepdad who was a butcher. And consequently, my mom was good at cutting meat. You know, when we got deer, she cut them up.
Mm-hmm.
But She had 3 kids by the time she was 20.
Wow.
And they were quite a bit older than me, 14, 15, and 16 years older than me.
Yep.
And the oldest girl died in a playground accident at 7 years old. But the 2 boys, Jimmy and Jerry, Jerry was opera singer, classical musician, pianist. And so she had 3 kids. Then she had 5 kids with my dad.
Wow.
And then she divorced my dad, married a guy that had 5 kids. So there was 10 of us at home at that time, 7 boys and 3 girls.
Wow.
Never had a problem getting a game going like baseball or football. We had 7 of us to start.
Yep.
And all within a close age range. But that didn't last long. And then she married Lee Perkins, the miner. And from about the age of 10 till 18, he was my stepdad. And he took us hunting a lot and fishing.
Would anything like stick out from your mother that she always taught you? Because it sounds like she was a tough lady, and sounds like she loved you guys.
Yeah. She taught us the meaning of pride. Because my dad was rich. He had crews all over the state, had his own airplane. He'd fly back and forth to jobs.
Yep.
But he also had girlfriends staying in motels in a lot of these places.
Sure.
And she found out about it. But she told him, all I want is these 5 kids. You can have the rest. Walked out on them. She could have got half of everything. And I don't know what you call that, pride or what. But she subjected us to poverty.
Yep.
When it didn't have to be that way. But she made me strong as far as I ended up going through the same thing with my dad myself. When he offered to pay my college, and then when it came time for college, I looked too hippie-ish and he wouldn't do the college thing. So I figured I didn't need him, and so I went without him. And when it came time for his inheritance, I didn't want it. Didn't get it.
Other people in your family did?
One brother.
Wow.
Ended up getting it all.
Wow.
A half-brother that my dad had with another woman.
Because he was more buddy-buddy with your father?
Well, he was the last child, and he was living in Great Falls where my dad lived. And he was a police officer. And my dad, at that time, had himself a young wife and was full-time party animal, Vegas, gambling, drinking, and had a young wife, and he was abusive to her, and she was divorcing him. And so rather than let her get half of everything, he put everything in Daryl's name.
I see.
And so when he died, before the divorce happened, it was in Daryl's name, and he just kept it all.
So you said you looked too hippie-ish. Like, it sounds like you had a pretty, good, like, classic upbringing for an American child. You hunted, you fished.
Yeah.
Worked with your hands.
Yeah.
When did that thought process shift where you're like, I don't know if I want to live in Montana forever?
Well, my brother Jerry, the musician, went from Montana to New York because he is into opera. He became a voice coach and teacher and choir director of a couple of different colleges at the same time. Was a voice teacher for Billy Joel, for one person. But he was studying in Europe on a sabbatical in Salzburg, Austria.
Yep.
And with the director of the Vienna Boys Choir. And he was over there for a couple years, and he sent for me to come to Europe when I was 16. Paid my trip. I left Butte with $35, came back with $50. And all kinds of gifts for my family. But he took me on a first-class tour of Europe, 14 weeks,
Wow.
all through Europe. The fanciest hotels, restaurants, first-class jets, all this stuff. And I saw the world. And I got some cool stuff over there. Some cool shoes and some radical, by Montana standards, clothing.
Could you give me an article of clothing?
Okay, well, my favorite pants were prisoner's pants, black and white striped.
Yeah.
A jacket was full length all the way to the ground. They called it a maxi coat.
Yep.
Wool.
Yep.
I got on Carnaby Street in London. Things like that. Shoes from Italy and Germany that were two suede shoes, like two-tone suede with a square toe and a high boot, like an ankle boot, like your...
Yep.
Yeah. But nobody in Butte had anything that looked radical at all. It was still bib overalls and jeans, man. And because I stuck out, I became a target. So I started getting bullied. I mean, 4 guys put the boots to me one time at a dance.
You were about 17 at this time?
Yeah, that age range.
Yeah.
16, 17. A guy blindsided me, hit me in the ear so hard that I was head first when I went down. Hit me so hard that it was like clothes hanging.
Yep.
You know, you hit somebody. And then the 3 other dudes jumped in and were kicking the hell out of me. And then I started being bullied in high school for guys that didn't like the fact that I had a cheerleader for a girlfriend. Football players grabbed me by the shirt, slammed me against the locker.
Yep.
Threatened to kick my ass.
Yep.
So I'd had enough of Montana and bullies and thugs.
Yep.
So
Where'd you go?
I graduated high school June 2nd, and June 4th I was in New York.
What year?
1969. And
Wow.
I was there for 2 years. And when I came back, well, in 1970, my brother paid for me a plane ticket to Europe again as a 19-year-old with another kid. And we toured Europe for the summer and on our own, and went to the Isle of Wight Music Festival. And guys your age don't know about that. It was bigger than Woodstock, 100,000 more than Woodstock.
Wow.
Jimi Hendrix, The Doors,
Yep.
The Who,
Yep.
Jethro Tull, Joan Baez, a whole bunch that was at Woodstock, plus a few that weren't. And biggest music festival ever at the time. It was Europe's version. It was on the Isle of Wight in England. And that changed me.
Yep.
So when I came back to Montana in 1971, I'd been through the student riots or demonstrations. I don't know if you know about that in 1969, 70. Started in Europe in 1968. Student strikes closed down almost every major university in the United States.
Wow.
Early. Everybody got out of school a couple months early.
Wow.
Black Panthers, anti-war movements, Students for a Democratic Society, different underground organizations. But I came back to Montana pretty radical looking, long hair, and I was wearing a t-shirt with a clenched fist,
Yep.
with a black tuxedo with tails, jeans and tennis shoes, hitchhiking.
And no one's got long hair out there, I imagine.
Oh, I'd walk down the streets of Butte and kids would say, "Daddy, Daddy, there's a hippie, Daddy."
Wow.
You know?
Huh.
But I'm hitchhiking on the road outside Anaconda when an old pickup truck with a couple of cowboys looks like they're pulling over. Then at the last minute I realized they're speeding up.
Yep.
So I did a backwards flip into the ditch. And they drove over my pack, kapunk, kapunk, and kept going. I wasn't too smart. I jumped out of the ditch going, "Fuck you!"
Yeah.
All of a sudden the brake lights come on,
Oh, yeah.
and they've got rifles in the back window, and they're backing up as fast as they can. I took off running across the clover leaf on there,
Yeah.
and some guy was driving there and had been working on his car and was taking it out for a test drive, a big old Chrysler with a big motor.
Yeah.
Hood was off of it. I jumped in front of him like that. I jumped in the car and I said, "Those fuckers are trying to kill me." He says, "No shit." And I looked over there and both of them had their rifle on the hood of their truck,
Yeah.
aimed at me. And these are cowboys and they hit what they aim at. So I came that close to dying that day.
Yeah.
Got to Missoula. I don't know if you want to hear more stories of hitchhiking.
I do. Man.
It was a different time in Montana
Yeah.
in 1970, 71.
Were you still working? Because around doing these interviews of elders, I see a lot of people my age that are doing the hippie thing.
Yeah.
And they're about in their 30s, and they have no skills. They got real soft hands, and they say they want a family. They say they want a wife and kids, but they're not doing the things that foster those things. So whenever you were doing that, were you still working? Were you still acquiring skills?
Well, that's when I became a college student. Well, I had 2 years in New York, and I did a quarter or two in Montana.
I see.
And I had to borrow money.
Yep.
And so whenever I borrowed money for college, I would do a little time at college, then go to work and pay off the loan before it even got interest.
And that was possible back then.
Yeah.
Yep.
$1,200 loan, get me through the first year and then, or the third year.
Yep.
My brother paid the first 2 years.
And then, like, what kind of work would you go and do? Just any kind of work you could find?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I went to school. It was pretty much no work at that time, but after I needed to pay that loan off, I left. I had a girlfriend from New York that was going to college in Denver, Colorado. So in January 2nd, 1972, I hopped a freight train out of Butte, Montana. It was 8 degrees below zero when I got on the train, and I'm going to Denver to work, Got down to 25 below zero that night on the train.
Whenever you say hop the train, you mean hop on the train?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hopping trains,
Yep.
Yeah. It was a freight train heading south.
Yep.
And it went over the pass, Monida Pass, between Montana and Idaho, where it's colder than hell. It's like 7,000 feet or something. And the snow was blowing, and most of the boxcar doors were open, and the snow was swirling in like this in the side of the thing. It was too cold to lay in my sleeping bag, so I just shadow boxed, all night, just jumping around doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And made it through the night. Went to a cafe in the morning, and me walking in that cafe was like putting a drop of ice in your coffee, because that whole room dropped temperature-wise.
Yeah.
And people looked at me and go, "Oh, that crazy sucker spent the night out last night." I ordered a cup of coffee, and I couldn't pick it up. Man, I was shaking so bad I couldn't pick it up. I tried and I spilled it, and the lady said, "Well, just put your hands on it, warm your hands up." But I finally made it to Denver, hitchhiked the next night, and stuck in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming. No town, no road, just a road that went off that way. Got picked up by a guy in a Volkswagen van, and I had to scrape the window from the inside. Couldn't defrost it with the Volkswagen in that kind of heat. But I worked as a short order cook and bartender at the Rathskeller at the University of Denver, where my girlfriend was going to school.
Yep.
And then I decided I wanted to go around the world. So I hitchhiked from Denver down to...
So you're about 22? 23?
21.
Yeah.
Hitchhiked to L.A. to catch a freighter.
Why? Why travel the world? Like what?
Well, I'd already been to Europe a few times.
What about it? What about it? I was like, I need to do that.
Man.
Yeah.
Experience.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, anyway, ended up in Houston because when I went to L.A. to get a boat, a freighter to South America, the longshoremen were on strike and all the boats were stuck out in the water and nobody's loading or taking boats in. Couldn't get on a boat. Met some guys that go to Houston, man. There's plenty of jobs in Houston. Got to Houston. You ever heard of Manpower?
This? What we're sitting in front of?
Manpower is a place in a lot of towns have it where if you show up early in the morning and get in line, they'll send you off to a job. And they sent me off to a job unloading railway cars with 3 young guys from Dallas. And they already had an apartment rented for a month. So they let me stay with them.
Yep.
We were living on next to nothing.
Yep.
Eggs were $3 or 3 dozen $1. Loaves of bread were 3 loaves $1.
Wow.
And we had eggs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Until we finally started getting paychecks when we got a job at a sheet metal shop.
Yep.
And then we did hamburger helper and macaroni and cheese.
Yep.
But that was the worst days of my life, Houston, Texas. Living in an all-Mexican neighborhood and everybody's a junkie. All my friends that worked with me were shooting up downers, Christmas trees, two and alls. My landlord was a Mexican mafia. I went to a party with Gilberto, the landlord, and we're sitting at the table drinking tequila, snorting cocaine, and listening to Mexican music and all the black lights and the posters that glittered, the fluorescent. And all of a sudden, Gilbert pulls out his gun and aims it across the table at Tony's head. Tony says, "What the fuck, man? Put the gun down, man. Put the gun down."
Yep.
And he says, "Hell, Tony, I never killed a man with my left hand." So that's the reason I had to get out of Houston.
You think you would have got caught up in that if you would have stayed?
No, I don't think so.
Wasn't your flavor?
No.
And after that, you went to South America?
Well, from there, I went back to Montana. Me and Candelario, my roommate. We hitchhiked to New York, visited buddies, hitchhiked to Montana. And we lived alongside the river, homeless. And I got a job at a mental institution as a janitor. And he hitchhiked back to Texas, but I ran across other people working at the institution. And so we squatted in an old miner's cabin up in the mountains, about 7 miles up a gravel road, and drove to work. And
wow.
First time I saw a wolverine up there.
Whoa. Not many people see those.
No, they're hard to see, yeah. But I went to South America the first time. I got a job working in New York with my girlfriend's dad, got me a job at a sheet metal shop. I was doing shipping and receiving, unloading trucks and load stuff. And I was a good worker, always was, and I would come off the semi-load with a big barrel, 55-barrel drum full of some chemicals they use in there, and just follow the momentum and just run through the shop with that thing. So one day, it's a union shop, right?
Yep.
One day the union steward and his son cornered me in the corner of a truck trailer and says, "You slow your ass down, man. We don't work like that. Union, this is union, man.
Yep.
You make us look bad. You go around here running around like that." So I learned about unions a little bit, even though I love unions, and my stepdad in the miners' union was great.
Yep.
But from that money, I left with $1,200 to South America. Learned Spanish as I went, practicing gracias and buenos dias, crossing the border.
Mm-hmm.
Got through Mexico, had some exciting moments. Guatemala, met some people, Rhodesian guy and a black Costa Rican, Mike and Carlos. They were going to America to plant trees or pick fruit, whatever. And so they didn't have any money, so I took them out and we had hot dogs and played some pool. And last time I thought I'd ever see those guys. But later on, I'm in La Paz, Bolivia.
Huh.
And I've tried a lot of substances. I was curious. Knew I'd never get addicted, never got addicted.
How'd you know you wouldn't get addicted?
Strong-willed person that doesn't let anything dictate my life but me. Type of thing.
You got any advice on that?
Just know when to stop and know do it in moderation and don't depend on anything like that. Food and water and air, man, love. And depend on that.
Yep.
And you get some love and food or sustenance from that. But anyway, I met those guys in Bolivia. In La Paz, Bolivia, the place called Alojamiento Buenos Aires. And that's how you say Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires. Argentinos speak with Italian accent. Because there's more Italian in Argentina than there is Spanish. Most people don't know that either.
So you met those guys and they introduced you to a substance you never seen before?
Oh, well, I figured I'm in Bolivia, famous for the cocaine.
Yeah.
I've been chewing the leaves. I mean, I've always chewed leaves and had, I can tell you the whole system of that sometime, but I went to that place, Alojamiento Buenos Aires, because I heard that's where the coke freaks were all hanging out. So I went into this hotel and checked around, went in a few rooms, and here's these spaced out coke freaks that are like unable to keep a sentence together. Murals all over the walls, the place is painted up. These guys are tripped out.
Yeah.
And they said, well, the guy that gives us the coke shows up about 2 in the afternoon or something.
Yep.
So I'm waiting around because I want to try it. And here comes Carlos, the black Costa Rican dude, coming in there. He's the seller, and last time I saw him, he was broke, and I bought him dinner, and he remembered.
Sure.
David, give us some. Sure. And so he said, Miguel, he spoke a little English too, but because the Rhodesian guy spoke English. Rhodesians were like South Africa. They occupied apartheid country like Africa. But Mike wasn't like that, of course. But so he took me to their hotel. They're living in the suite on the top of the hotel with 2 Dutch girlfriends and anything and everything.
Yep.
Planning a big trip to Canada with a load.
Yep.
The last time I saw those guys. A lot of stuff happens in those places.
You ever interested in the whole ayahuasca aspect of South America? Or not so much?
That wasn't a thing back then. And for the parts of the country I was in, I think that was more of a tropical.
Yep.
I was more into the mountain culture. I was always way up in the mountains. But when I was crossing from Ecuador to Peru, I met a Japanese guy. I preferred to travel alone, not with other gringos.
Yep.
Because that way you immerse yourself in the culture. You're not like a group of guys going around speaking Spanish and talking about those people. You do with them. I spent my evenings playing pool in the pool halls.
It's easy to find one bed. It's hard to find a bed for 3 gringos.
You know, you can get extra rooms. Yeah, I've been in, Asia, for instance, Iran. I was in their dormitory-style rooms.
Uh-huh. So you've been everywhere, would you say?
Well, I went to South America 3 different times. But that trip, the first trip was 9 months, and I did it on $1,200. I worked a little here and there, not much.
Yep.
Hustled pool. Sometimes I'd make enough for dinner and the hotel.
Yep.
Trickled it out. Went as far south as the Pan American Highway goes.
Yep.
The Pan American Highway goes on the west side of the Andes.
Uh-huh.
So it goes all the way down, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile. And then the bottom of Chile, I was with Jiro, a Japanese guy then.
Yep.
And he was a mountain climber that came with an expedition from Japan, and because there's a lot of 20,000-foot peaks in South America.
Yep.
He left and they went back. He didn't want to go back to Japan. But when we got as far south as the Pan American Highway would go, we hiked over the Andes into Argentina.
Wow.
It was only like 3 days.
Yep.
Because we were in the southern Chile. It's called the Lake region. Great fishing, man. Kids had like a beer can with line wrapped around it.
Yep.
A little hook and sinker.
Yep.
Put some bait on it.
Yep.
Like that, and roll it, unspool it off the thing.
Yep.
And then they'd be rolling in trout about this big, man.
Wow.
Naturals, not plants.
Wow.
Nice, beautiful trout.
Yeah. Huh.
But we ran out of food because we didn't think it would take that long.
Huh.
And we were 2 other mountain climbers from England. And they had huge packs, man.
Yeah.
All the picks and all those things that they have. And they were keeping up.
Yep.
Me and Gito just had a lightweight traveling stuff.
You go to Asia?
Yeah.
Yep.
The first time I went to Asia was 1960 or 74.
Huh.
And me and Fanny, a girl from Montana, raised on a horse ranch in eastern Montana, whiskey drinking, tough girl, nurse. We hitchhiked to New York, took a plane over to Amsterdam probably, went down to Switzerland, met a friend of mine from Butte, who was dual citizen, as both his parents were Swiss. He was working as a machinist at a big factory place in Switzerland. And he left with us. We went from there down to Italy, across France and Spain, down to Morocco. And things got dicey in Morocco, so Eddie kind of freaked out and went back to Europe.
What do you mean by dicey?
Oh, some hustler dude in Tangier. It's like a Mexican border town, Tangier. Everybody's there to get the gringo, get the tourist,
Sure.
what they get out of you.
Yeah.
And this guy, want some hash, man? We said, nah, because he looked like a hustler and that kind of guy. You hear stories, they'll give you the hash and then the cops will come and bust you and he'll get part of the bribe.
Sure, yeah.
So we didn't want any hash, and he says, come on, man, buy some hash. And so try it anyway. And he says, we're not going to buy it. He says, try it. So he gives us some hash, and we tried it. And he says, well, how much you want? He said, they told you we weren't going to buy it. And he got all pissed off and threatened to kill me. But Eddie had a real nice Swiss watch.
Yep.
And he said, I'm going to get that watch off of you before you leave Tangier. And Eddie freaked out, went back to Europe. Me and Fanny just got a train out of town. We went down to Rabat and Fez. And then we went east through Algeria.
So you're traveling with a white lady.
A blonde white lady.
Why'd you break your rule? And that you like to travel alone.
I was a different guy then.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was first time in South America, it was different. After that, I traveled with a woman everywhere, pretty much.
Uh-huh.
But me and her split up in India.
Why did that change?
I got married, for one.
No. Why did it change for you to be able to travel with a white lady? What was that thought process shift on that? I want to travel by myself, no other white folks near me, to...
Well, I guess I wasn't that firm in my commitment to doing it.
Pretty blonde lady changes that commitment,
well, she was a good friend.
Yeah.
And we had romantic moments, but we weren't really a romantic couple.
Uh-huh.
We were good friends.
Uh-huh.
And she wanted to go somewhere, and she just won a settlement for discrimination.
Mm.
She tried to work on the railroad as a switchman, and they passed her up, and she won a $1,500 settlement or something, and she had some money.
Hmm.
I'd been working on a ranch, and one thing I learned in Montana, 1974, when I came back from South America, I was broke.
Mm-hmm.
But in Montana, you could take your backpack to the unemployment office, say you want to work, and they said, okay, and I called, make a phone call, and they said they'll pick you up in half an hour, take you out to a ranch. So I flood irrigated on a ranch.
Hmm. And you're doing cattle work, you're doing fencing work.
No, it was mainly irrigation.
Uh-huh.
See, I was...
Uh-huh.
I helped with branding, castrating, stuff like that.
Sure.
On another ranch the next year.
Uh-huh.
But that ranch, they needed an irrigator, and he had a lot of ground and a lot of water changes all over. So I'd wake up at 5, set some canvas, the canvas flood, dig outlets. You put your canvas in there, dig some outlets, and the water flows out those outlets. Make sure the water's directed down the hill right. And then go do it somewhere else. Do it up there on that little patch.
Yep.
So at 7, we'd have breakfast. After breakfast, I'd go back at it, work till lunch. And a lot of times she'd pack me a lunch, the wife. And then work till dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And then one little thing after dinner until dark. 14-hour days. $10 a day. Room and board.
Yep.
I saved $300 a month.
Yep.
Wasn't bad in those days, considering.
Yeah.
All I had to buy was I smoked at the time, my rolling tobacco and some insect repellent, because the mosquitoes are bad.
Yep. When you went to Asia, did you find... Because I've known this man for some years now, known about him, I would say. And he's always blown my mind for the way that he dresses, one. I like how he shows up looking good every day. That's something that I've always admired about Dave. And that he's a hard worker. And that he has skills. And that he has a wife. I think that's a really admirable thing. And something that I learned about you. So you do Tai Chi.
Yeah.
You do Qigong. Yeah. Where'd you learn about that?
Back in Idaho, before we moved here, we lived off the grid in Idaho for 8 years in teepee. And in Moscow, Idaho, there was a guy that was into Chinese medicine and had healers gatherings.
Uh-huh.
He's a pretty famous guy, Paul Pitchford. He's
Heard
got
of
a
him.
lot of books.
I've read his book.
And I forget the name of the place down in California where they teach Chinese medicine. A lot of people, Danny knew him. But anyway, I helped him put on these healers gatherings by being, I call it physical realities.
Yep.
Setting up outhouses, setting up water systems, maintaining stuff like that at healers gatherings, and I got to meet a lot of healers. It was a high quality healers group. Like they had a guy from India, Sid Tayal, who taught polarity and yoga and stuff. They had Jacques Delong from France, who's written books on Do-In. You know about Do-In? Chinese self-massage. Works with meridians, you know, a lot of tapping, tapping, you know, stuff like that.
Okay, I've done it. I didn't know the...
You know,
sure,
like
sure.
That. And Paul Pitchford got me into Tai Chi a little, taught a little of that. When I moved here, Rob Pell at the Sunshine Cafe was teaching Tai Chi. And I got serious with it then and became his best student, I guess, because he had me teach his classes on Saturday. He'd teach the one on Wednesday, and then I'd teach him on Saturday.
When did you move here?
What's that?
When did you move to Williams?
1986.
Why?
We were living in Idaho, off the grid.
You and your wife?
Yeah.
When did you guys marry?
Well, we got together in 79.
Wow.
We got married when we bought this property just for paperwork purposes.
What about her? What was the first thing you noticed about her where you were like, whoa?
Oh, man. That woman still can and always has create a palace out of nothing. A lean-to that was fit for a king. Tapestries, pillows, curtains, cooking ability over fire, ability to live in nature and create home anywhere. That's probably it more than anything.
What about you does she change? Like what does she bring out in Dave that you didn't see before that?
Oh, I don't know. It's a good question, I guess. Well, over time, I've learned lessons.
Sure.
No immediate changes I can think of, because we were both world travelers at the time.
Yeah, maybe change isn't the right word.
But there have been changes.
Yeah.
Like, I used to react and feel offended or need to have my way because I know I'm right on a certain issue. Where now I'm willing to let her win, you know, and realize that she's more happy, I'm more happy, and she wasn't that wrong in the first place. And a lot of times she was right. Where I felt like I had the better view of things or something.
And that's that love you were talking about, I'd say, in many different ways. So you do Tai Chi. Would you accredit that to, I mean, you haven't babied your body at all this life.
No.
You haven't lived an easy life whatsoever. And you don't. I mean, Dave and I just got done chainsawing, and he was right there with me. So what?
Yeah, the Tai Chi is a lot of it.
Yeah.
And the Qigong. Yoga.
And you got
things. Improvise and create your own.
And you got a good diet?
Yeah. Well, Monique's been organic since I ever met her. Was vegetarian until maybe 10 years ago.
So if you had to give a few sentences, advice to the young lads or the old lads, the old gals or the young gals on how whenever I'm 70 can I still be cutting firewood? You got any advice there?
Do have a discipline. You need to have a discipline that you actually take seriously. You know, everybody can do Tai Chi and everybody can do yoga, but do you do it regularly, and do you focus and feel it in your body where the attention needs to be? And wiggle yourself around to figure out what things actually do something. Like, sometime I'll show you one of my basic things that nobody does.
Yep.
That is very subtle, and not everybody can even do because they can't control the muscles.
And that was what you're talking about that was helping your sciatica.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And one thing I do now, like today,
yep.
I got a little bit of a sore back up there.
Yep.
I get a big pillow.
Yep.
And lay on it like that so my back's arched and get right into that point in your spine where you feel it.
Yep.
And you just stay there and relax and breathe into that. Because the more you relax into it, you can feel things pop.
Yep. Yep.
But I've picked fruit, apples.
Yep.
10 years.
Yep.
Same 10 years as planting trees.
Yep.
Planting trees is as hard as shearing sheep. Some people, I've known guys that did both, and they think that apple picking was harder than, or tree planting was harder than shearing sheep.
Because you're bending over and over and over.
And you're carrying a lot of weight. You're carrying the trees.
Yep.
And it's miserable conditions, and apple picking 10 bins a day. A bin is 40 boxes. There are 25 boxes, and they're 40-pound boxes. So that's 1,000 pounds per bin.
Yep.
So you're picking 10,000 pounds of apples a day.
Yep. That adds up.
And you're hustling up and down a ladder with weight.
Yep. Yep. Well, this is a question that one of my favorite interviewers does, and I think we'll close up here because I've taken enough of your time already. If you had a billboard that you could share to all the young men out there, what kind of things would it say on it? Because I think, you have a beautiful home. I think you have what a lot of young men are desiring and chasing. And what would your advice be to the 20 to 30-year-olds out here in America?
Well, this is advice that I live by, and the reason I'm not rich, because I've been into pot as long as anybody in town.
Yep.
I'm old enough to be a pot smoker for over 50 years, right?
Yep.
So what I would tell people that made me happy, and if I put it on a billboard, it would be, when you know when enough is enough, you will always have enough. And it doesn't take much to have enough. And enough will make you happy. You don't need all that other shit. But I don't know if that's going beyond the billboard stuff, but simplicity.
Yep. Yep. Let's leave it there.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
Sure.